From Baltimore's streets to boxing's brightest lights, Gervonta "Tank" Davis turned pain into power. Feared for his knockouts, guided by Mayweather, and haunted by controversy, his story is more than boxing. It's survival, glory, and the fight for legacy. Gervonta Davis's story starts in one of the toughest environments in America, the streets of Baltimore. Born in 1994, Tank grew up in a city defined by poverty, crime, and survival. His parents struggled with substance abuse, and by the time he was 5, social services had already intervened. Tank and his siblings were placed into foster care. For most kids, this would have been the beginning of a tragic spiral, but for Davis, it planted the seed of resilience. Life in Baltimore was unforgiving. He saw violence regularly, lost friends at young ages, and lived with the constant reality that his future might be cut short before it even began. But Tank had something that separated him: raw energy and a need to channel it. At just 7 years old, he wandered into Upton Boxing Center, a small local gym that would change his life. Inside the gym, Davis found stability. The ring became a sanctuary, the punching bag an outlet for his anger, his pain, and his hunger to escape. Coaches immediately noticed his potential. He was short for his age, but his fists were explosive. He didn't just hit hard, he hit with intent. Every punch carried the frustration of a kid fighting not just an opponent, but the life he was trying to outrun. Boxing wasn't just sport for young Tank, it was survival. In a city that devoured young men like him, he now had a weapon and a path forward. His legend was already beginning, forged in the heart of Baltimore. At Upton Gym, Tank came under the guidance of Coach Calvin Ford, a man who understood him in a way few others could. Ford wasn't just a trainer, he was a survivor of Baltimore's streets himself. His life story even inspired the character Cutty in HBO's The Wire. For Davis, who needed structure and belief, Ford became both mentor and father figure. Ford saw more than just natural talent in Tank. He saw fire, but he also knew raw fire can burn out if not controlled. So he drilled discipline into him, teaching him footwork, defense, and patience. Tank was a prodigy, racking up amateur wins quickly, but Ford reminded him constantly, talent gets attention, discipline wins championships. Under Ford's wing, Tank's career took shape. He dominated the amateur circuit, winning tournaments and collecting national titles. But beyond the victories, what stood out was his style: compact, aggressive, explosive. He fought like a pit bull, relentless in pursuit of the finish. Baltimore fans nicknamed him Tank for his build and ferocity, a name that stuck for life. Still, the streets never fully loosened their grip. Even while rising as an amateur, Davis battled distractions, trouble at school, run-ins with authority, and the pull of old friends heading down dangerous paths. At times, it looked like he might slip, but Ford kept pulling him back, reminding him what was at stake. This is your way out, son. Don't throw it away. Tank wasn't just learning how to fight. He was learning how to survive, how to focus, and how to channel his past into something greater. By his late teens, Gervonta Davis was turning heads beyond Baltimore. He had compiled an amateur record of over 200 fights, winning most of them with dominant performances. In 2013, at just 18, he turned professional. Within 3 years, he was 15-0, all but one of those wins coming by knockout. His power was undeniable, and whispers began, this kid could be the next superstar. That's when Floyd Mayweather stepped in. The undefeated legend saw something in Tank, a reflection of his own hunger, but with a completely different style. Where Floyd was a defensive genius, Tank was a wrecking ball. Mayweather signed him to Mayweather Promotions, branding him the future of boxing. From that point forward, Tank wasn't just a promising prospect. He was Floyd's protege, the golden child. With Mayweather came exposure, bright lights, media attention, and pressure. Tank began fighting on Floyd's undercards, introduced to massive crowds. The boxing world watched as this young southpaw demolished opponents with shocking ease. His left hand became a weapon feared across divisions, his knockouts going viral online. But being tied to Mayweather wasn't only opportunity, it was expectation. Fans wanted to see if Tank could carry the same aura Floyd had. Critics wondered if he was being protected. And inside Tank's own mind, the weight of living up to Mayweather's chosen one was heavy. Still, Tank thrived. In 2017, at just 22 years old, he became the IBF super featherweight champion, one of the youngest champions in the sport. Baltimore had produced a world champion, and with Floyd Mayweather at his side, Tank Davis wasn't just a fighter anymore. He was becoming a star. Once Tank Davis entered the professional ranks under Mayweather's banner, the rise was nothing short of explosive. He wasn't just winning fights, he was ending them violently. By his 10th pro fight, his record was spotless, and almost every opponent had been knocked out cold. Fans began whispering that Tank carried the kind of natural, destructive power you couldn't teach. The turning point came in January 2017, when Davis fought Jose Pedraza for the IBF super featherweight title. Pedraza was a tough, respected champion, but Tank dismantled dismantled him in 7 rounds. At just 22 years old, Davis had become one of the youngest world champions in boxing. His performance wasn't just dominant, it was a statement. He wasn't climbing slowly. He was bulldozing his way through. From that point on, Tank built his reputation as boxing's premier knockout artist. He dropped Liam Walsh in London, silencing a hostile crowd. He demolished Jesus Queller in Brooklyn, picking up another belt. Each fight added to the aura. Davis wasn't just beating opponents, he was breaking them. Fans packed arenas not to see if he would win, but how? Would it be a body shot, a left uppercut, a brutal overhand left? His knockouts went viral, spreading far beyond boxing circles. People who didn't follow the sport still shared clips of Tank putting opponents to sleep. What made him dangerous wasn't just raw power, but patience. He stalked his opponents, cutting off the ring, waiting for the perfect opening. And when he found it, the fight was over. His record became a highlight reel of sudden violence. By the time he hit 20-0, all but one fight had ended inside the distance. But as the knockouts piled up, so did questions about his discipline outside the ring. For all his brilliance between the ropes, Tank's life outside it was growing more complicated. Tank Davis's career, as dominant as it was in the ring, often veered into chaos outside of it. His life mirrored the contradictions of his upbringing, brilliance under pressure, but constant battles with demons. Even as he collected belts and headlines, Davis faced multiple legal issues. There were arrests tied to street altercations, accusations of domestic disputes, and high-profile incidents caught on camera. One viral moment showed Tank grabbing the mother of his child in public during a charity event, a move that drew massive backlash. Each controversy became fuel for critics, who argued he was too reckless to become a true face of the sport. His driving record also came under scrutiny, with a hit-and-run case in Baltimore hanging over him for years. While lawyers fought in courtrooms, Tank fought in the ring, somehow keeping both worlds spinning. Fans were split. Some said his personal struggles would derail his career. Others believed they only added to his mystique as a fighter from the streets who never escaped the chaos. For Tank, the challenge wasn't just opponents, it was focus. His mentor Calvin Ford often admitted that keeping Davis grounded was the hardest part of training him. Fame, money, and attention swirled around him, threatening to pull him back into the same cycle he had once escaped. Yet, every time Tank returned to the ring, he delivered. He would silence doubters with another knockout, remind fans why they tuned in, and reset the narrative, at least for a while. But the controversies lingered, hanging over him like a shadow. Could Tank stay disciplined enough to fulfill his potential? Or would his personal life derail one of boxing's brightest stars? Despite his controversies, Gervonta "Tank" Davis rose into a rare category in boxing, a true pay-per-view attraction. In a sport often starved for crossover names, Tank became box office gold. Why? Because he promised violence. Every time Tank fought, it was an event. Fans bought tickets not just to watch a fight, but to witness destruction. He sold out arenas in Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, and Baltimore. Crowds erupted the moment he walked in, his aura already intimidating opponents before the bell even rang. His fighting style, explosive, aggressive, highlight-friendly, was built for the modern viral age. Promoters noticed. Networks noticed. Suddenly, Tank wasn't just a fighter, he was the future. Mayweather Promotions marketed him as the heir to Floyd, but with more knockout power. Where Floyd had built his empire on defense and longevity, Tank built his on devastation and fear. Their partnership created intrigue, the greatest defensive fighter mentoring the sport's most dangerous offensive force. As a pay-per-view star, Tank crossed into pop culture. Rappers name-dropped him in songs, celebrities showed up ringside, his fights became nightlife events, drawing crowds beyond the traditional boxing fan base. Even people who knew little about boxing tuned in just to see Tank end another man's night early. But superstardom raised the stakes. Tank's performances weren't just about winning anymore, they were about proving he could carry boxing forward, about showing he could deliver not just knockouts, but history. And in 2023, he got that chance. In the fight that would define him. Every star has a defining moment, a fight that transcends belts, rankings, and weight classes. For Gervonta "Tank" Davis, that moment came in 2023 against Ryan Garcia. This wasn't just a boxing match, it was a cultural event. Tank, the Baltimore knockout king, versus Garcia, the flashy Californian with millions of social media followers. Two undefeated young stars, two contrasting personalities, colliding in a fight branded as the face of boxing. The build-up was electric. Press conferences were tense, filled with trash talk and stares that could cut glass. Garcia painted himself as the golden boy, tall, fast, and confident. Tank, by contrast, was quiet, menacing, and surgical with his words. "You'll see when we're in there. You're not built like me." The hype didn't just stay in boxing circles. Rap blogs, mainstream outlets, and social media platforms buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't just for fight fans, it was for everyone. When fight night arrived, the stage couldn't have been bigger. Las Vegas lit up with celebrities, influencers, influencers, and legends of the sport, all waiting to see if Ryan's flash could handle Tank's firepower. The fight itself delivered the drama fans had hoped for. In the second round, Tank dropped Garcia with a counter left hand that reminded everyone why he's feared. Garcia got up, fought bravely, and pushed forward. But the longer the fight went, the more Tank's patience took over. He wasn't rushing, he was hunting. Then, in the seventh round, it happened. Garcia threw a combination. Tank slipped and unleashed a perfectly timed body shot, a left hand to the liver that folded Garcia like a deck chair. Garcia took a knee, wincing, unable to beat the count. It wasn't a highlight reel knockout to the chin, but it was devastating nonetheless. The crowd roared, Tank raised his arms, and the boxing world had its answer. Gervonta Davis was the real deal, the man to watch, the face of the new generation. That victory wasn't just about beating Ryan Garcia. It was about proving that Tank could headline the biggest stage and deliver. It cemented him as more than just Mayweather's protege or Baltimore's favorite son. He had now carved his name in the history books. And with Garcia conquered, the question echoed louder than ever. Who could stop Tank Davis? To understand Gervonta Davis's dominance, you have to look beyond the knockouts and study the blueprint of his style. On paper, Tank is undersized for many of his divisions, standing just 5 feet 5.5 inches with a 67-inch reach. Against taller fighters like Ryan Garcia or Mario Barrios, he often looks like the smaller man. But that's what makes him so dangerous. His stature forces opponents to underestimate him. His compact frame hides a coiled spring of power that explodes without warning. Tank fights southpaw, leading with his right hand, which sets up his destructive left. But unlike many knockout artists who rely solely on aggression, Davis is patient. He studies, he stalks, he takes rounds off if he has to, downloading his opponent's tendencies, waiting for the one mistake he knows is coming. And when it does, the fight ends. His timing is his secret weapon. Against Santa Cruz in 2020, Davis delivered one of the most brutal uppercut knockouts in modern boxing, timed perfectly after Santa Cruz threw a combination. Against Barrios, he wore down the bigger man before unleashing precise counters. Against Garcia, he found the body shot at the exact moment Ryan overcommitted. These weren't lucky punches, they were surgical strikes. The psychological edge Tank carries is just as important. By the time his opponents step into the ring, many are already beaten mentally. They've watched the highlight reels. They've seen grown men crumble under his shots. They know one mistake means lights out. That fear changes how they fight, making them cautious, hesitant, less willing to take risks. And that plays directly into Tank's patience. This fear factor is what makes him a pay-per-view star. Fans pay not just to see him win, but to see how he'll win. Will it be a clean knockout, a body shot, a counter they never saw coming? Every fight carries suspense. That inevitability of violence keeps audiences glued until the very end. Comparisons to Mike Tyson aren't accidental. Like Tyson, Tank is short, compact, explosive, and terrifying. But where Tyson overwhelmed opponents with ferocity, Tank adds calculation. He's chaos with a chessboard, destruction with a strategy. That combination makes him one of the most dangerous fighters alive, and one of the most entertaining. As of today, Gervonta "Tank" Davis remains undefeated. He's a multi-division champion, a pay-per-view star, and one of the most feared fighters in the sport. But the real question isn't about what he's accomplished. It's about what comes next. Tank is still in his late 20s, young by boxing standards, yet already decorated with belts and millions. The Garcia fight proved his ability to deliver under the brightest lights. But critics still wonder, will he take on the absolute best of his era? Names like Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, and Vasily Lomachenko loom large. To secure his place among the all-time greats, Tank will have to face and beat fighters like them. Then there's the shadow of his personal struggles, the legal issues, the controversies, the distractions. Will they derail him before he reaches his peak? Or will Tank finally leave the chaos behind and focus solely on the sport that saved him? His mentor Calvin Ford has always said the biggest fight of Tank's life isn't in the ring, it's outside of it, staying disciplined when the lights go off. Legacy isn't just about knockouts, it's about dominance, consistency, and longevity. Floyd Mayweather retired undefeated, cementing his name forever. Mike Tyson captured the world's imagination, but lost the discipline that could have made him untouchable. Which path will Tank follow? That's the drama that makes his story so compelling. One thing is certain, right now, he's the most electrifying knockout artist in boxing. He sells out arenas, dominates headlines, and terrifies opponents. He's not just Baltimore's son anymore, he's the sport's most bankable star, and maybe its future. Gervonta Davis's journey from foster homes to global superstardom is already the stuff of legend, but the book isn't finished. Every fight he takes from here on out will decide whether he's remembered as a superstar or an all-time great.